world has gone insane. Cosplayers rule the conventions, gamers dominate the tabletop, and the internet. Sci-fi subjugates the movies, and fantasy rules the bookstore with an iron fist. Only one group can bring order to this unruly mob. A team of uber geeks, masters of the nerdly arts, trained for decades in the hobby shops and basements of the nation. Mobilized by the secret masters, they are the Department of Nerdly Affairs.
Hello, operatives, and welcome to the Department of Nerdly Affairs. I'm your host, Rob Patterson, here with my co-host, Don Chisholm.
Hey, I don't have a bit this week.
And tonight, we have a special guest to make up for Don's lack of a bit. Tonight, we're going to be interviewing Justin Charles, formerly of First Draft Productions, now of Sando Savant, and currently the co-host of A Dude and a Chick Walk Into a Studio podcast. Welcome to the show, Justin.
Hey, how are you guys doing? Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on. So, Justin, why don't we start by you telling the audience a little bit about yourself?
Well, I am a media professional, but we're not here to talk about that. I am an avid old-time radio fan. I love this stuff. I'm also a former audio drama producer. I'm also a geek. I'm a nerd. I'm just like that literally is all that there is to me. Also, I'm married, by the way. Like that's the afterthought here. So my wife, I hope my wife doesn't listen to this. But I mean, I hope she does, but I mean, I'll get in trouble.
That does make you exceptional as geeks go, because a great many geeks are not married. So there we go. So that almost disqualifies you, but I think the rest of it will make up for it.
Well, I appreciate that.
So one of the reasons we asked you on, Justin, is because you're from the nation of Trinidad and Tobago, correct?
That is absolutely correct.
So just in case our audience doesn't know much about Trinidad and Tobago, can you tell them a little bit about it?
Yeah, we're the southernmost island in the Caribbean. We're right next to Venezuela. We were, as Caribbean islands go, we were colonies. Spanish first. Christopher Columbus discovered us in 1498. Named us La Trinidad for the three peaks in one of our mountain ranges. We were Spanish for the longest time. Then the British took over, as they are wont to do. Mm-hmm. And we became independent in the 60s. So we've been a republic since the 70s, and so we're just an island, man. We're just cool.
Just a cool line. How many people live in Trinidad and Tobago?
Well, I can only tell you from when I last left. When I left initially, because I've been away for quite a while. I left in 2005. As of then, we had 1.5 or 1.7 million people just in Trinidad alone. Right.
And so is Tobago literally part of the same nation, or is it kind of a separate thing? How does that work?
No, Trinidad and Tobago are both one country, okay. Just two separate islands, but they operate as the same country. Tobago had a markedly different history than Trinidad. It's more rustic. It's more the tourist-centered aspect of our nation. Tourism is their number one export, as it were. And Trinidad is more of the, day-to-day living kind of thing.
Right. Okay. Well, what's Trinidad's major exports then? If you're not focused on tourism, what are you producing?
Oil. Oil. Black gold, baby.
Oh, okay. So
also soca music. The steel pan, which was invented there. The steel drums with the, we invented that.
Right. Okay.
So we export a lot of oil is the major one.
Right.
But yeah, we have a vast cultural impact in the world today.
Right. Wow. Not bad. Okay, well, speaking of culture, so I'm assuming since it was a British colony for a while there, the main language that you speak in Trinidad is English?
Absolutely.
Is that the only language, or you guys have another one as well that people commonly speak?
No, we speak English. I left out a little part. At some point, we had French inhabitants in our island. Like the Spanish, when the Spanish took over, eventually there were, the island was underpopulated. Like aside from slaves and those kind of things, the island was underpopulated, and so the Spanish reached out to the French people in French planters rather in places like Haiti, and told them like, hey, come on over, planting's good. And so we have like a tinge of like French influence. Like we have people who speak patois, but that's kind of like a dying kind of thing. It's more streamlined, more English.
Right. Okay. So you've definitely got the Spanish influence then, and a little bit of French, and a little bit of everything. Really, that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
So then, what are the major outside cultural forces on Trinidad? Like, what countries had the most influence culturally on your culture and day-to-day life there in Trinidad in the modern era?
America.
That would make sense.
I mean,
that's not required. You guys are next to Venezuela, and Brazil's not too far away, and you do have there's England as well. You guys have other options. You don't have to only be influenced by America.
I mean, that's absolutely true. But our schooling, our school system, and our government system are still follow the British systems. Like so. We do that, but never really feel the impact of change until you've been away, as it were. And so, but by the time I left in 2005. Things were still coming up on like we were technologically, like I'd say like 2 to 3 years behind. I would say like the United States and Canada. But like after the first year of me being in the United States from 2005 to 2006, and I went back for the summer, the changes, like just the technology changes, just like it just sped up. It just came right back at me, as it were. I was like, oh, I just left America. What am I doing back here? Oh my gosh. But yeah, we've always been influenced by America. Like we've received our local channels. Like back in the day, we only had I remember a time there was one television channel, and then we got 2, and then we got 3. But we've always had like American TV shows. Like we didn't really have locally produced television content, at least at that time, and or not many
beyond the news anyway.
Well, yes, beyond the news, absolutely. And so we got a lot of stuff. Golden Girls, believe it or not. Sesame Street, I mean, that has to be in there everywhere. Yeah. So that was like early on. And then, of course, we had cable television, which introduced a whole swath of like Americana and just different things. So like, yeah, we had like Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon. So we began to see all these things, like all these cartoons and anime, and that really brought like our cultures closer together. Just the access to the cable and to seeing what America had, as it were.
For just general reference, when were you born, Justin?
Oh, I was born in 1985.
Well, I just wanted to see when. So, what age we're talking about here when we're talking about those. So, yes, the shows you mentioned would make sense actually. Cartoon Network and Golden Girls and everything, because those are products of the '90s.
Yeah.
I just have to ask because Don and I, of course, are both old guys.
Very
don't
old.
Do that. Don't do that to yourselves. You guys are experienced. There's nothing wrong with that. At least that's the excuse I'm going to use when I'm that age.
Oh, thank you very much. But as a result, we actually remember when there were only a few TV channels on American TV, much less Trinidadian TV or Canadian TV in our case, of course.
Yeah.
Because Canada is similar to Trinidad in that sense that when actually, even right now, we really technically only have, what do we have? 3 or 4 Canadian TV channels, like proper, not cable channels, but actual proper channels.
Wow. We get more than that, because remember, you get all the French channels too. Those still count.
They do count. Yes, I forget about those all too often. But there's really only 2 of those, right? There's like CBC French, and then there's another one that's I can never remember what it's called because I never watched it. But there's the French.
And then there's one that's basically it's a TVO in French.
Oh yeah, yes, you're right. There is. Okay, so technically, fine. We're sitting about 7 or so, but whatever. Anyway, but we're not here to talk about Canada. We're here to talk about how awesome Trinidad is. All right, so. So when you were growing up, Justin, then, so what were some of your like influences? Like, what were your favorite shows when you were growing up? Since we're talking TV.
Okay. Of course, a lot of them would be foreign imports, as it were. Right. The first TV show, other than Sesame Street, as that being that young, that I can remember sinking my teeth into and really just being an avid fan was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Okay.
Right.
Like that, I would not miss that for the world. That was my thing.
Right.
Then I had like an inkling into anime, like a small intro into anime with the Samurai Pizza Cats.
Another classic.
Yeah.
Yes.
And at that point in my life, I had no clue what anime actually was. It was just another cartoon to me.
Of course.
But yeah, like those, and then up came like, more anime. First was like not Zoids. I've never watched Zoids. It was there though. Pokemon. Pokemon was like,
Of course.
as it's it went across the world, so we watched it. Though this is actually funny. Our island is relatively small, and so like when something becomes a phenomenon, it really kind of takes root. And you can't, and it's difficult to find someone who's not been influenced by it. And that was Ruroni Kenshin, or Samurai X. Every like, look, every Saturday morning, I kid you not, like everyone revolved their lives around, rescheduled things around the airing of we had it as Samurai X. It's only a lot later than I became, I started to know it as Ruroni Kenshin. But, people were like, we would either get up early, or when I was older, we would have like, I'd have like lessons to take in the morning. And so I would just videotape it with my old dusty VCR and like come back home and see it, and everyone would be on the phone like, hey, you see what Kenshin did? Oh man, that fight was so cool. I mean, tell you what, like, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen Reflections, like every like big, strong, like manly alpha men were like crying when Kenshin died. I kid you not. They were so involved in that entire story, that family, those characters. When Kenshin died, it was like a national tragedy, as it were, for the my generation, the ones who were genuinely interested in it. It was something else, man. But yeah, like, and then we had Tekka Man Blade. Well, we had it as Techno Man. And like once those anime started coming out, we realized, hey, anime is a thing. There's more of these. So we'd go to the video stores, and then we'd have like, okay, I'll tell you this, but this is Trinidad back in the day was not very strong on copyright infringement. So I would go to the video store, and there'd be copies of like volume 3 of this anime, or volume, like they never had the entire thing. It was just like, bits and pieces of these different anime, and I would just like voraciously rent those and watch those and be like, hey, I need to see the rest. A lot of those I actually to this day have never seen the beginning or the ending of. And I have the means to. It's just that, life. But yeah, like the more anime we consumed, I consumed specifically, the more I gained an interest in it. And when the internet became a thing, and YouTube became a thing, and like not even YouTube, like downloading .avi files of entire series of anime and just like marathoning them with your friends. It was something to behold.
Yeah. I'm wondering, because you mentioned in Trinidad you got a lot of American influence. And I know one thing we have in Canada, and we've talked to other people in other countries that had this. Was there an attempt by the government or local media or even the people to sort of limit outside influences in the media, or was it just accepted that you'd import all of this stuff?
Oh, absolutely. There was, at least not to my knowledge, I think it would have been a big thing for me to know about, that I would have known about or heard about. No. It's like there was no need to censor. Like, we were very friendly. We were very open in terms of ingesting media, I guess, as it were. Like, we were like, there was nothing about American media that, at the time, I can't really speak for now, that the government was like, hey, hold up, no, censor. I don't even think we had the kind of technology to even attempt that, to be perfectly honest. But, but
right.
no.
Well, I think what he means is, at least in a lot of places, like Canada, for example, we have what's called the Canadian Content Rule, which means all our television stations have to show a certain amount of Canadian content every day, or even our radio do. This is to encourage Canadian culture and to try to encourage companies to put money towards Canadian products. Is there anything like that in Trinidad?
To be perfectly honest, I have no idea. I don't like. I think I would have heard about it, especially if
probably,
yeah,
if it was a thing. But like, I don't think so, to be honest.
Huh.
I'll get back to you guys. About that.
No problem. Okay, so we talked about TV shows and especially and anime and such. So what about comic books? Did you guys have actual comic books coming in? Obviously American comics, probably.
Mostly American comics. Now the advent of like video stores and TV and not TV, video game stores and comic book stores. Well, it wasn't really I wouldn't say it wasn't really a thing. They were very sparse when I was a teenager. I remember there were people who literally just imported them or came up to America and just bought a whole bunch of like comics and stuff and just brought them down and like sold them at the side of the road, like set up a little stall and sold comics there.
Huh.
Wow.
There are stores that sell that, are specifically deal with comic, like bookstores that have comic books and manga and stuff like that. But before growing up, like we may have had like one or two of those. But it was like the Wild West pretty much.
So did you read many comic books when you were growing up?
Actually, no. I kind of felt overwhelmed. I had a good friend who was really into them, and he would buy every single issue of every single, and to me, I'm a story oriented person. And so I refuse to see a movie if I haven't read the book. I refuse to read part of a storyline if I, or at least a new story. Like, I can't enter into something cold, as it were. I have to start from the beginning, like, story-wise. Back in the day was acceptable because I didn't know any better and I didn't have access to them. But now I'm sort of a purist like that. So I always felt, and I still do, to be perfectly frank, feel a bit daunted into like stepping foot in that realm. There's so many stories to be told, and so many stories to read up on and catch up on and know about, and it's difficult.
Okay. I can see that perspective. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they are designed so you can kind of jump in almost any time, but yeah, well, at least American comics are. They basically, your average American comic is a story that runs usually these days, I think, like somewhere between 2 and 5 issues worth. And then once that story is done, and they move on to another story with the characters pretty much the exact same. Like, you have to understand, it's not like manga where the characters are actually evolving as they go along, sort of. American comics characters never change, not significantly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
They can even die, like Superman or Batman. They've both died, and it doesn't matter really. I mean, someone takes their place for a year or so of comics, and then they come back, and it's as though they were never dead to begin with.
You see, and now that's actually refreshing. That kind of puts me in the mind of like, maybe I'm gonna try it out. because I've never really, had that perspective. I've always been afraid of, there's so many things to catch up on, and I'm going to need to read. Like, yeah, you're right in the fact that I did kind of lump it in with manga in terms of like the progression of character development, etc., and all those like little nuances that I may not grasp had I not read something before. So yeah, that's thank you, Rob, thank you.
You're welcome. Although, well, here the way it works is, at least traditionally, I don't know if it's still true, is that American comic companies assume that comic book readers only stick around for 3 years max. So they assume that after 3 years, their readership is entirely changed. And so because of that, they have to keep these comics basically going perpetually. They basically keep them on a treadmill. Oh. And also, of course, you don't want to kill the golden goose. Yeah. So,
of course.
So nothing in comics ever lasts more than 3 years, ever. Well, except for maybe the death of Captain Marvel. But that's even that didn't really stick. So yeah, that's an obscure Marvel joke. Never mind. Anyway, so the point is that there's no one stays dead. Nothing actually sticks. If anything's popular, it's coming back. It's just a question of when. So the real question is, do you like the art style, and do you like the writer who's currently on it?
Okay.
And people often read artist or author runs as opposed to the whole comic series or whatever. Oh. So, for example, if you get a comic book like Spiderman that's been running like 800 issues, you won't really or even want to read all of it. You can if you want to. You can go to Marvel.com, pay a subscription fee, and get access to their archives.
Do it the right way.
Do it the right way, exactly. And so you could do that. Or you can do things like you can go find collections, like you'll find collections of the best of Spider-Man or something like that. And often what there'll be runs of, let's say, a particular writer was on Spider-Man, like Peter David or something, was on Spider-Man. He wrote maybe 20 issues. People love them. And so they'll collect those particular issues because they know those are the ones people want to read again. Mm-hmm. But maybe the next writer wasn't as good, so people don't really care. So there'll be no collection of them unless you go back into Marvel's archives or something.
Okay.
And so that's how American comics work. The only exception to that, offhand, that I would say, there is one exception, and that's the X-Men.
That was one of the most popular comics down in Trinidad for quite a while. And I guess that's because my friend would always tell me about these different storylines and things happening, and like, one character is dead, and next minute, like I pick up one comic and I read, here's this character with the girl with the bones, Marrow, I think her name was, and then the next time I like picked up a random comic, I was like, Marrow's a bad. What's going on? When did this happen?
Right.
That's the 2000s X-Men, I think. What? Huh? Who? What? That kind of sums it up.
That's pretty normal, even for regular readers.
Yeah.
For the 2000s. No, what I meant is that the X-Men, and this is what made the X-Men so popular, was actually had one writer named Chris Claremont who was on it from like the late 70s to the early 90s.
Oh, wow.
I think he was on it like 17 years. And so you had one voice and one vision for the comic for like 17 years. And so he wrote it as one kind of like one giant big old saga.
Oh, wow.
And so that's and you can find them as the Essential X-Men collections. And those are worth reading, actually. I mean, they do change as they go along because you're looking at different eras of Marvel Comics and different styles. But Claremont was heavily influenced by manga as well. So what he was trying to do in some ways was actually an American version of what the Japanese were doing and what he could see the Japanese were doing, but do it with American superheroes. And that's what produced the X-Men, which everyone loved and thought was awesome. But in the mid-90s, he got forced out due to politics we're not going to go into at Marvel, and then it became the same as every other book, with a different artist-writer team basically taking it over for like a year or two, and then the next team would come along and completely change everything the previous team did, and reset things or change things or do whatever stupid crap.
Well, let me ask you about that, though. Speaking of that, which would you prefer? I mean, I kind of see points in both directions, honestly. One, you have an established writer who, you're not necessarily just comfortable with, but you've approve of their style, and you've been you like their style and you like reading their work, and it satisfies you in that way. But then there's also the concept of give other people a chance, see what other people, new ideas, new voices do within that medium.
Yeah, see other takes on it. I would say, now this is me personally, I'll give Don a chance in a second, but I would personally say I prefer the Japanese approach, where you have one artist and one writer, or at least one writer, and we see their vision of how the story goes and give it a complete, say, arc or whatever. And then if when it's finished, other people want to do their take on it, I am okay with that. I guess that's kind of what happened with the X-Men. But that's not the norm in American comics. The norm is like you're on it for 2 or 3 years, and then you go off and do some other project. And whoever follows you basically resets back to zero as though you were never there, and they do their version of it. And you're right, it does give a lot of different visions, but I don't know. I've always felt that it's lacking something, because in the end, the characters never really change. The characters are never really evolving. They're just going through the motions of evolving, and then the reset button will be hit at the end anyway, and you kind of know it.
Yeah.
What do you think, Don? What's your take on it?
I think, personally, I can see either way of doing it is fine, but I think as a fan, you have to accept which kind of book you're reading. Because when it comes to comic books, I was never a big superhero guy. I read the Undergrounds, the Independents, and that was typically one person writing it and doing the art. So you got that one developing story. But then the superhero thing with the Perpetual book, there's been a lot of really good entertaining stuff, and like Justin had said, there's that idea of a new take on the character, a new take on the setting, and that's nice too. But I find what happened when you got to the mid to late 90s, a lot of the long-term fans, which, like Rob had said, up until the 80s, it was assumed you'd only read the comic for about 3 years. But the long-term fans were wanting that more character development and story progression, but the situation of how the books are published precludes that, and there was a lot of nerd rage at the time over the different changes. And I think, you just have to accept that if you read the X-Men, it's going to change in a couple of years, because as a Perpetual book, it kind of has to.
That's interesting. I also fall on the side of Rob in the Japanese thing. I'm more of a story oriented person anyway. That's how I read my books. That's how I play my video games. That's how I watch my shows. I'm very interested in the story of things.
I can understand that, Justin. I can understand why you would obviously, I can understand why you'd prefer stuff with a clear overarching story and the characters actually developing and the feeling it's going somewhere. I mean, I guess for me, I'm actually okay with the purely episodic stuff. I mean, I love some of the 70s and 80s Spider-Man stuff, for example. And Batman books are actually pretty good.
Spider-Man and his Amazing Friends. I forgot about that. Oh my gosh, it's Firestar and Iceman. We had that too. I'm sorry. I just brought it back to my memory, my consciousness.
No problem. My condolences. All right. Anyway, actually, no, I shouldn't say that, because not only have we, I think, had the actual guy behind that on. I think Will Meugniot was actually involved with that, if I remember right.
Yeah, because that was the first. Was that the first Marvel animation production?
Yeah, it was actually. I think Will worked on that. Okay, so we've actually had him on the show.
Oh.
Yeah, actually, yes. I recommend people go back and listen to Will Meugniot's interview. It was an amazing one. He was one of the guys behind Marvel Productions and during the 80s and 90s, including Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. Mostly as a board artist, but involved in other ways as well. But anyway, no, that actually I shouldn't poo-poo Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, because it was one of the very first real attempts to do a real Marvel type show on the air, in the format of Saturday morning, and to do something that was a little more serious and not just something that was Hanna-Barbera goofy or something that was a 60s motion comic.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll give Spider-Man His Amazing Friends its due. And now I completely forgot what I was going to say. Now I completely derailed.
Okay. How about I cut in with an interlude with me in my actual accent, as opposed to being a fraudster. And I'm speaking my American accent.
Okay.
So yeah, this is in case you were wondering why I had an American accent, and I was clearly from. And I keep saying that I'm from Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean. I'm a fraud. I'm a phony. I'm a big fat phony. No. Well, this goes into audio drama. I started, because of the whole all anime and stuff like that. You kind of get interested in the voice acting. Who's behind your favorite, dub and stuff. And so when I came to the US, actually, my girlfriend at the time, she was into that, like amateur voice acting and stuff like that at Voice Acting Alliance .com, which I don't know even know is still there. And R.I.P.
There is a Facebook group, I think, that it kind of moved to. So it is, I think, it still exists on Facebook, but not as a separate forum anymore. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's gone.
It in my opinion, it kind of like I don't want to get on it. Anyways, yes, back to the accent. I kept auditioning for roles, for different roles, and of course, I'm a newcomer, so I'm not going to audition for main character one with the tragic backstory and the need to be emotive and etc. But I was more content with man in crowd A, man in crowd B, soldier A, reckless bystander, that kind of thing. Just back roles. And I would audition for these spots, and they would have their lines for me to read. And of course, I was no stranger to the American accent because I grew up with American television. So like I had ample time to like ingest mentally all the American accents rather. And so I would do the line, and then halfway through the line, I would start talking I would start breaking back down into my accent. So I would start a line like this and end it like this. And so I decided to do a full deep dive, just like, hey, I was in college at the time, so it's like, see, and this is another thing. My brain confuses stuff. So if I'm talking to people with an accent like this, my brain automatically wants me to start talking with an accent like that. I have to actually concentrate. If I'm not talking to another Trini, it's going to go back to the American accent. So yes, I spent the next 3 or 4 years of my college experience speaking exclusively with the American accent, specifically with the purpose of perfecting it.
Right.
You
did a good job.
Why, thank you.
Yeah, that's crazy how you slip in and out like that.
It's well, I mean, and the kicker is, I'm speaking to you with a Trinidadian accent right now, but anybody who's from Trinidad would still hear an American tinge to it because I've had to actually retrain my brain to pronounce things differently, pronounce things in a way, because we pronounce things in the good old British way. But so I've had to rearrange, in learning the accent, I've had to rearrange how I pronounce certain words. And so even when I go back to my Trinidadian accent, there's still those remnants of the American accent, and that's enough for people back home who don't know me to either think, one, I'm either faking my own accent for whatever reason, or two, you spent some time abroad, haven't you? So like, yeah, it takes me like about a week of full immersion back, like going back there and being there for a week for me to fully reclaim the slang and just the nuances that make the accent.
Right.
But as of now, this is what you're hearing here, and I would assume you're thinking to be a Caribbean Trinidadian accent, an actual Trinidadian accent, is not actually a full Trinidadian accent, at least not to other Trinidadians anyway.
Right.
Wow.
That's perfectly reasonable. Okay. But it still sounds very cool. I mean, from a Canadian perspective anyway, the Caribbean accents sound awesome, actually.
And, one more thing. We're not all Jamaica, by the way.
Yes, I know that.
I mean, no, I know you and your wonderful co-host, I assume would know that. But every time I tell people I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, I'm from the Caribbean, it's like, where's that? It's in the Caribbean. Oh, are you close to Jamaica? Yeah, man. I'm like, no. We are two separate, and we are like, that's north, that's higher up in the Caribbean. We're the southernmost. And they're like, yeah, man. I was like, okay. Anyways, you just had me triggered there. I just triggered myself rather there for a second.
How did you end up in the United States, Justin?
Well. It all has to go back to my schooling. Schooling. We have the British system. And, okay. See, I'm already back into the American accent, so I'll just stick with it this time.
Just stick with it. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. So okay. In high school, we have the British system, we had the A levels, right? Mm-hmm. And the A levels, I've done 5 years of college up here. I've written the GRE. Mm-hmm. I've done SATs. I've done tons of exams, and the A level still remains to this day the most difficult exam I've ever taken in my entire life. Those things were brutal. So
actually, sorry to interrupt, but Americans don't know what A levels are.
I know. Oh, right. My apologies. Okay. So the best way I can think to describe it is, how in Harry Potter they have the OWLs that they have to take in their fifth year, I think. Those are what we consider the O levels. It's like they patterned Hogwarts' exams in school after the British school system. That's and so, when we don't have middle school here. We just like go straight from primary school to secondary school, mm-hmm. and we have our years are called forms, not like grades or anything like that. So, mm-hmm. When you go from Form 1 to Form 5, at Form 5 you write the O level exams, which is basically the British exams like the OWLs in Harry Potter. After that, depending on how well you do. You can either, like back in the day, this was more frequent. You would, come out of school, look for work, that kind of thing. Or if you had the grades, you would continue high school. Trinidad, at least in the Caribbean, Trinidad colleges are one less year, but we have one more year of high school to because up here college is 4 years. Ours is University of West Indies is like 3-year institution. So we go to Form 6, and in Form 6 you do higher studies, and you pick what you want to specialize in, like sciences or mathematics or languages, etc. And you have to write the A-level exam. And after that, it's essentially, if you do well on that, you're pretty good college-wise. Nowadays it's a completely different exam. Like I'm old. With regards to what's happening now, I have no clue what's happening now over there in terms of examinations. I know they're not doing the A-level exams anymore. Trinidad isn't. But yeah. So they were the most difficult. It was crazy. And so I know I'm rambling, but bear with me. So I didn't do quite well in the A-level exams, and so I wanted to do journalism. My parents were like, hey, because I did sciences, and I sucked at sciences, sad to say, like chemistry, biology, physics. I was more, but the one subject I did, which was general paper, which is essentially like, hey, here's a topic, write an essay about that topic. Literally, that was all it is. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's the one exam I aced. Like I just tore through that, and I got like close to full marks. And so my mother was like, hey, you seem to like writing. And at that point in my life, I did like writing because, okay, we can come back to that too. Mm-hmm. But you see, my mother wanted me to parlay those writing skills into a journalism career. But the University of the West Indies in my country, in Trinidad, did not have a journalism program at that time. And so the only campus for that had that was in Jamaica. And nothing against Jamaica, but my mom was kind of scared to send me to Jamaica. Mm-hmm. So I had a family member in the U.S. at the time, and they had apparently sponsored my family, or my mother, my father, and I, to get green cards. And it was at that time, like fortuitous time, that the green, it came through, and I had a green card, and so all of a sudden I was a permanent resident in the United States, and so the decision was made like, hey, Howard University, which is near that relative, has a journalism degree. Send him on up. As a permanent resident, I can get access to like grants and student loans and all those kind of things, as opposed to like coming in as an international student.
Right.
And so I came up to Washington D.C., went to Howard University for college.
Mm-hmm.
And afterwards, during those years, I fell in love with the place. Not necessarily just the fact that it was America, but I fell in love with like the convenience, the fact that, oh my gosh, I can play video games whatever I want. This was the first time I was away from my parents, by the way, ever, like in a completely different country. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's how I came up here. I came up for college, and everything just kind of fell into place, really. And here I am. I just decided to stay.
Right. Okay. No, that's awesome. So you've stayed, and actually, let's follow that through. So what degree did you graduate from college with?
Well, that's another tale, but I'm going to keep that one short.
Okay.
So I did journalism. I started my journalism degree, as I said. And during that time, that's when I started getting into audio dramas and radio plays and voice acting and stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And so I would do that as a hobby on the side and just continue with my journalism career. But me personally, I didn't quite I was good at writing. I was good at, reporting and doing stories and stuff like that, but it didn't scratch that itch, if it, as it were. Like, I love telling fictional stories. Mm-hmm. And I got that itch scratched, if I were to use a term, doing audio dramas, because even going back to Trinidad, like having access to all this like manga and especially anime, like I started writing, like, oh, I can do better story than that, and I'd write stories and implement and involve my classmates and then make my classmates characters and stuff, and I'd have like some of them who didn't even care about reading. I was like, hey, what's happening to my character, that kind of stuff like that. And so I had a lot of those. I wrote notebooks upon notebooks upon notebooks of this stuff, and being in America and trying this voice acting thing and no one actually using my voice talent, I got frustrated. I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna make stuff myself, man. Right? So I got Cool Edit Pro, the precursor to Adobe Audition, and I just started like converting all of the stories I'd written, or most of the stories I'd written, into like scripts. Set up auditions. I swore to myself I was only going to cast newcomers, because I had that righteous indignation. Like, give all these newcomers a chance. No one gave me a chance as a newcomer. I'm just gonna write and make my cast entirely of newcomers.
Right.
And so I produced a bunch of radio plays and audio dramas, and I got a hang of the actual production process, and I actually fell in love more with the production process than actual voice acting. Which, I would still voice characters, like if I needed a line, like a throwaway character, I'd still voice that. But at that time, I was in my beginning my junior year, my third year in college. Now I'm supposed to be done after 4 years, and I'm just not into the journalism thing anymore. I'm like, this is not me. This is not what I'm doing. But my parents are paying to send me over here, so I'm going to do it. And we're in the School of Communication lobby, and I see a course schedule for radio, TV, film production. And I'm like, oh, we have this? No, I should have known we had this, but I didn't. So it's like, we have this? And I was like, yeah, I looked through all the courses, and I'm like, hey, I can do this. I like editing. I like audio production. And I turned to my mom, who had come up to visit that summer. I was like, yeah, you probably want to have Dad sit down, and when you want to tell him this, I want to switch majors. In the beginning of my junior year. So I switched it to radio, TV, film production. And that's what I ended up graduating with. So production major. And that's, all because of my love of theater or the audio drama.
And by the way, I should protest because I did have you acting in my productions, and I did give you a chance, so you can't say that nobody did.
No. I was talking about the very beginning, Rob. You were a perfect gentleman. You gave me a shot, and I was glad to take it.
Okay, and you did some amazing work. Actually, you did some great work.
Well, thank you.
No, you did. Actually, I cast you as I was Henzo Vasquez, who was one of my major villains in the Twin Stars series.
Yes.
You portrayed him perfectly.
Jean.
Yes, exactly.
I remember the character's name.
Yep.
I don't know if I'm actually doing it correctly now, but
I don't think
years.
you are, but it's okay. It's been a while. It's only been like 10 years, so it's okay.
10 years. A lot of stuff can happen in that time.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, so what are you doing now, Justin? Are you actually still in actual production, like video editing and such?
Yes, that's literally my job description. I'm a technical director at a PR firm. We have several clients who have several shows or productions that need to be done, and so I'm assigned to make those happen. I also moonlight on the weekends as a studio tech for NBC Washington here. So I'm currently working 7 days a week. So there's that. And I love what I do. I love what I do. I love creating, and that's, it harkens back to everything, man. I love creating. I love bringing things to fruition, like just being part of a team, whether it's, now I can stand nonfiction, but because it kind of correlates with my paycheck.
Right, yeah.
But, I like the feeling of being part of a team, or at least, creating things. Oh, we need to talk about video games in Trinidad.
Yeah, okay, well, here, we'll get to that in a sec. But so I want to loop back around to something then. So tell us a little bit about the audio dramas that you did. Now, I know you did one called Budajin. Was that your first audio drama?
No, actually. So I've been trying to write a novel forever. And even since back in high school, it's seen many iterations. I've written it, and my writing style sucked back then. Even going and looking back at it now, it's just like, where was I even thinking? What was I even thinking? I rewrote it in my modern style, and that's what I actually used for my very first audio drama script. It was called Reign of Daikafra. It did not go very far, but it did introduce me to the world of voice acting and the world of production, rather. It gave me the taste of the whole casting and auditioning and editing and putting things on tracks and multi tracks, and just letting the scene all play out and picking the right backgrounds music and picking the right sound effects. That first one, I still have it. I'm not gonna. It's never gonna see the light of day again because it's so horrible. I just keep it around to remind myself to stay humble, because it was really bad. I did do back in the day. I saw a fan fiction, or Legend of Zelda fan fiction, called The Wrath of a God, and it was really long. And it was amazing. It literally took my breath away. I was a Legend of Zelda fan ever since Ocarina of Time, and they followed that path, that storyline when they were going, and it was amazing. And I was like, I have to bring this to life, man. I have to do it. And so I went over the internet scouring to find who the author was, and I could never find the author. His name was Rich Berrigan. And it on the fanfiction website, they call it Rich Berrigan's The Legend of Zelda: Wrath of a God. Right. So I looked everywhere to see if I could find this guy, if I could get his permission. Hey, I like your story. Can I? And I couldn't find it. I did my due diligence, and I was like, this story's too good not to tell. So I made the decision here. What I'm going to turn this into an audio drama, and I did, and it was epic. It was so great. I loved working on it. I loved working on it from start to finish. The cast was great, and so that was.
Well, hold on. How long was it? How many episodes did you do?
It was, I think, 4 or 5 episodes, but then I combined it all into one big file, to one long file. So
basically like a giant movie.
Yes, essentially. So it's I have to dig out and see where I left that, because I'm sure I saved a lot of these things, but it's just, a matter of where they are. But I really liked that one. It wasn't my best work as a producer, as an editor, but I got better with each episode.
Right.
And
hope so.
Yeah. And if you listen to it, you should be able to actually see the progression through, how I did, how I improved.
Right.
But the best part about doing that was, man, like 5 or 6 or 7 years after doing that, I get a Facebook request from Rich Berrigan.
Oh.
And he said he was just, Googling some of his old stuff, trying to see Wrath of a God. And he expected just his fanfic to come up, and he found the audio drama version of it. And I was like, I did try to find you, but I couldn't. So I attributed it to you, like, whoever you are, Rich Berrigan, this one's for you, right, buddy. Yeah. And he loved it. Like, he was just like, it was a really surreal moment, though, because it's like, this is the original writer of the story, and it was me just interpreting what he wrote, and he is just gushing about how much he loved it, and how much, I mean, of course, not everything when it was exactly as he'd have it, but he said it was a really, really faithful adaptation of what he had in mind. So like, that was kind of like, not really vindication, but it made the whole process worthwhile, and I just really enjoyed it. Butajin was a love letter to Ruroni Kenshin. I mean, I think anybody who would listen to it would be able to tell you. And Rob, you voice acted in it as the maniacal Seiza Ali.
Yes, I did. For one episode, and then I died horribly, if I remember right.
I mean, you were defeated, and then you were stabbed in the back. But I mean, hey,
stabbed to death. But that's life. I understand. It's an actor's life.
I mean, but you were formative. Without your technique, the main character would not have been able to defeat a future opponent. So,
okay, I appreciate that. I helped.
Yes, you even got a flashback laugh too. So
right.
But
I'm glad I could contribute. Yeah,
hey, it was worth it, and I appreciate it. But yeah, Butajin was like, and that was actually the one project other than The Legend of Zelda that I actually finished a complete season. Like, I had more things planned for it, but life, kind of got in the way. But Butajin is one of my favorites. I love the voice cast. It's essentially little girl, parents killed by this guy wearing a pig mask. She swears revenge. Later comes to hear that this famous guy, Sword Saint, has come to live in the village and just tries to, like, become his student. She becomes his student, but his style forbids people to kill. So it's like, I'll teach you, but you can't kill anyone, so this revenge thing isn't going to really work out.
Right.
And it just goes from there. It's a lot of twists and turns. It ends with a really big twist, and which is why people expected it to continue. But as I said, life tends to go on and on and on.
Yes, it does.
And interrupt stuff. I also had a mecha audio drama called Project Arclight. And that was the last one I was actually working on, and I produced the first episode 11 years ago. and then life happened. And then I found a burst of inspiration one day. I was like, hey, let me continue this. And so last year, I finished episode 2. After 11 years of space going in between there, I got all the original voice actors who were in the first episode, and they were gracious enough to be like, hey, and they provided the voices and stuff, and it was a blast to work on, really. Just to get my feet back wet into the whole audio drama thing again, to see,
right,
if I would still be able to do it, and it was really fun. Can I do it consistently going on? Not particularly, unless I find another editor. But it was fun to do it, and it's fun to every once in a while produce an episode of it. Possibly it's just whether the voice actors would have the time or the patience, I guess, to go along with my life, my life circumstances, as it were. And yeah, that's really it for the audio drama bit.
Right. Have you done any other writing? Have you made any other attempts at writing one of your books or anything like that, or writing stories?
Actually, yes. So speaking of Trinidad, we have a very abundant source of folklore, and I see in manga and anime, we see the Japanese use, and quite frankly abuse, in my opinion, their folklore. But I mean, hey, if you have it, why not use it, right?
Right.
And they use it in some very, very intriguing ways, not necessarily the way you would think they would be using. And so we have an abundance of folklore in Trinidad. And so I was like, why don't I don't think I've actually read or seen anything or anyone do anything with that. And so I'm started to write a story based on the character of the Jumbie. Now, the Jumbie in Trinidad folklore is literally just a ghost. I'm taking some creative life, a spirit rather. I'm taking some creative license with what that spirit entails, and the powers and etc. like that. Essentially, in my story, is basically goes back to a voodoo curse on a family. Basically, voodoo curse on a family that if any generation is born in threes, if the children of a generation, one is born in threes, the third child is born, the curse will kick in, and it will give the 3 children the powers of the Jumbie, one each.
Right.
And it will nurture in all 3 children it will nurture in all 3 children the jealousy and the power lust to gain all 3. Because it's like the movie The One. You kill a sibling, that power goes to the remaining 2.
Right. One
sibling kills the other 2. He gets all the powers of the Jumbie.
Right.
And
now,
so,
quick question. Is so? Let's say sibling A kills sibling B. Does sibling A automatically get sibling B's power, or could sibling B's power go to sibling C instead?
They both, siblings B and sibling C. Wait, which one is the one that got killed? I'm sorry.
Okay, sibling A kills sibling B. Okay.
Yes.
Will sibling B's power go to sibling A who killed them, or would it go to sibling C, the remaining sibling?
It would go to both. A weakened version of that power would go to both sibling A and sibling C, which would increase the necessity to kill the remaining sibling to acquire everything.
Right. Okay. And also give them a little bit of extra power as well. Okay, that's nasty.
And so the whole I'm giving this to you as an exclusive, by the way. The whole concept is essentially, back in the day, a French planter came to the island. He was able to rise the societal ladder really quickly, gain a lot of money, marry into a very prestigious family. Some people considered voodoo, or we call it obia, to be the source. And they were right. He made a pact with a obia woman to gain all this wealth, and then he would leave that family with the wealth and marry that woman's daughter.
Right.
He did not. Instead, killing the daughter when she confronted him about not following through. And so the Obio woman, in a bid for vengeance, went after the one thing that he cared about more than himself, and that was his children, his 3 children.
Right.
And so that's what happened. She gave each of them the power of the Jumbi.
Right.
Told the youngest, hey, these are your powers. These are what you have now. Your siblings have powers. You can kill them and have all of them.
Right.
And so, ever since that curse was inflicted on the family, it's been enacted only if there's 3 siblings.
Right.
So if there's 2, that's fine. And so like eventually the family line became like started whittling out because of it,
right.
And it comes down to the last remaining line of that family.
Right.
And so those are who the protagonists are. You have 2 brothers. The 2 brothers, one who is actually a psychopath, who feels no emotion, etc. And the other is the older brother who sees that in his younger brother and tries to curb it. Tries to like, okay, let me teach you how to act around people. The only gist is the 2 of them have superpowers. So.
Right. Okay. So what kind of story? Is this meant to be like a horror novel or something? Or is it more of a superhero, like manga type take on it? What do you plan on doing with it?
I was actually going to... I'm planning on doing a kind of like Justice League-esque thing where this is one character. And then we have introduced another folklore character in another novel, who is not necessarily the second character. Is a foreigner. Like he was born in Trinidad, but he like me, but well at a much earlier age was taken to live abroad, and only coming back, at the death of a family member,
right.
And what he is bequeathed by that family member kind of just leads him into this entire world of folklore and mysticism, etc. And so the plan is to like ultimately just bring them together from the first novel and second novel and have like a sort of not really detective agency, but a sort of like paranormal investigation kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah. The first novel, the Jumbi character is more hardcore, more like I would liken it to Batman, and the second one is like Superman.
Okay.
The second story is a little more wholesome-ish. The first one is sort of gritty, and gets you into the feel of what's happening right now.
Okay. Now I have to ask: are Trini people really superstitious?
No, as a rule. Well, okay. I've been like a lot of that stuff happened before. A lot of that happened before I was born. So I've been reading up and researching for this. I've been reading up a lot of our own folklore and a lot of stories that people gave orally. A lot of these stories came from a mixture of French, our history. Like our history. Like we have Papa Bois, who is literally like the father of the forest kind of person, protector of the forest kind of thing. He's essentially that's from French lore. We have Mama de l'eau, or Mother of the Water, who is a villain or a hero depending on how you treat her. We have the Sukunya, which is I don't even know how to start describing this one. The Sukunya is a giant fireball who inhabits the skin of a human being. And this giant fireball on nights sheds its human skin and sucks the blood of animals and cattle, etc.
You gotta wonder where that one came from.
Exactly,
wow.
exactly.
Wow.
And the only way to kill one or to defeat one is to find the skin and lace it with an abrasive substance. In the stories, they use salt or pepper or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So when they go back into it, it burns them alive, as it were, or something to that effect.
Right.
Then we have the Duen. Now this is actually very kind of horror movie-esque. The Duen are the souls of children who died before they were baptized or christened.
Mm-hmm.
And this is how I'm going to describe them. Just imagine a fetus that can walk, but its feet are backward. Feet are facing backwards.
Mm-hmm.
Which leads to a lot of tricky tricks. They're like the goblins, I guess, of Trinidad, I guess.
Huh.
They steal away children if they know the children's name, which is why back in the day, in a lot of country areas where there are a lot of forested areas and stuff, people wouldn't refer to their children by name or call out their children by name because, hey, the Duen could probably come get you to kidnap
would
them.
Probably start calling the children's names and lure them into the forest.
Yep, yeah. and with the fact that they have backwards feet, they can easily lead them away or lead them to into a trap, as it were, because you'd be following them as though their feet were forward facing,
right?
But they'd actually be walking backwards if that were the case. So it's crazy. We have the Lagahu, who's essentially a shapeshifter. Imagine it's just a werewolf that can just imagine a werewolf but without the full transformation. And they can take different animal forms. And yeah, that are the top of my head. A lot of these folklore come from a time where Trinidad didn't have long swaths of land, roadways didn't have any lighting, road lights and stuff like that. And so, there was a long journey in the dark. Maybe you would see someone's clothesline hanging, and it would glint off the moon, and it would look like an evil spirit or something.
Right.
And so with the advent of technology and lights and stuff, proper lights all over the place, a lot of that has died down, and superstition isn't really a big factor in our country anymore.
Okay, interesting. Are people? Oh, sorry, Don, go.
Oh no, I was just gonna say because a lot of those boogly monsters you were mentioning, they sound very French. It sounds like that bit of French influence. Because for some reason, French evil spirits and monsters and that, they have a thing for wearing skin. I'm not sure what happened in France back in say the 1100s, but there's a lot of them that you have to find the skin and yeah, you put salt or sand in it, and then when they put it on to transform back, it kills them.
Yeah, that's crazy. It is. Oh, you do have to wonder about that, honestly. Now that I'm thinking about it, shudder.
Yeah. Well, actually, speaking of that, so Justin, have you actually ever encountered anything odd or supernatural yourself in your life?
No. And I say that, no. And I say that with the, I've experienced sleep paralysis before.
Oh, okay.
In Trinidad. And, I don't know if anyone's ever had it. You do see things. You do see things. So that experience can be explained away by science. So I haven't had anything other. Thankfully, I would add, I haven't actually seen anything else.
Right. Okay. Interesting. I partly asked both out of curiosity about yourself, and I also asked about Trinidad people being superstitious, because I've noticed that people from warmer climate countries, like my wife's country of Taiwan, for example, tend to actually be very active. It didn't have very active imaginations when it comes to like superstitions and such. So I wasn't sure if it was the same kind of thing in the Caribbean, like in Trinidad, for example.
No. I mean, as I said, we're more Americanized, so we don't have time for that with all our iPods and Nintendo 64. So that's ancient. What am I saying? And our Nintendo Switches and etc.
Yeah. Well, actually, let's talk about video games then, since you brought them up. So what's the history, your personal history of video games in Trinidad?
Oh wow. Well, my first interaction with it was those those little video games that I can't even remember what they're called. They're just like they're pre
They're pre-Game Boy.
They're pre-Game Boys. Those little like standalone like digital, not well digital.
You're talking about handheld machines, aren't you?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so these little handheld things that could play one game, basically.
Yes, essentially.
One simple game, yeah. They're more like an advanced calculator that just plays one game. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so they were those, and then my cousins got a Game Boy, and they only had Tetris, but I love Tetris, right. And I played Tetris. Now, this was like before I was even 5 years old. This was like I was like 3 or 4 at the time. And then they got an NES. And they got Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt. And I was hooked. But they were my cousins, so they didn't, of course, they had their own house. So, my parents were very, strict about video games. They didn't want me very much exposed to it. At that age, anyways. And then I remember Christmas 1990, 5 years old, open up my Christmas present, my brother and I, and it was an NES of our own. That was amazing. Only problem was, though, it was Final Fantasy, the game they got for us. So I was a 5-year-old kid with Final Fantasy. I had no clue what was going on or what would need to be done, or I was just like, what is this game? I'm just walking around and there's numbers and there's letters and reading. I don't know what's going on. And so my older cousin was like, all right, I want to play that. And so he swapped Super Mario Brothers with it, and he played Final Fantasy, and I was just here, okay, playing with Mario and Luigi, because at the time I didn't know how to pronounce Luigi properly. And so, yeah, that and Duck Hunt, and, that was my first foray into real, like, console gaming. And, of course, growing up, like, as I got older, our malls had video arcades, like, with all the cabinets and stuff, with Street Fighter 2, Mortal Kombat, like, Outrun, Galaga, all those games. And so there was a very, 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 very huge, arcade presence, like video arcade presence when I was growing up, like very huge. Like so much so that I don't mind telling you, I was kind of addicted to it. I would go there, I would skip class sometimes, be a little delinquent and go to video games. It got to the point where my family members would be like, "Oh, Justin would miss his own wedding if if an arcade was on the route." Right. And so, I mean, I kind of wanted to do that just to kind of like, but my wife wouldn't have it, so it's okay.
Right? Yeah.
And but yeah, like video arcades, and we would play like the co-op games like Golden Axe and Golden Axe 2, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time, all those like co-op games that I guess you guys would have had up here.
Yep.
It would like those were really good bonding things. Like bonding, that's what we did as friends. We went to the video arcade, like popped in our quarter. Well, we didn't have quarters because that's not our currency. We popped in our coins, and we just like played. And I remember the best feeling of achievement. One of the best feelings of achievement I ever had was when a group of my friends actually beat Golden Axe. Like it was great. It was excellent. And so, yeah, like, as we got older and, like, the arcades became more sophisticated, more, like, newer games and stuff, and my console game experience kind of lagged behind with just the NES for a while. And then I got a Sega Genesis.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm gonna say I also used ROMs, emulators and stuff. don't use emulators and ROMs, people. But
of course.
like I would go, like there would be places that would allow you to play like a Super Nintendo for a set amount of time by like you pay money for like 15 minutes or 20 minutes or an hour playing Super Nintendo, and they had all these games, and that was my first experience with a Super Nintendo. And I saw games like Legend of Zelda, Link to the Past. I saw Final Fantasy 3, Final Fantasy 2. I saw Chrono Trigger. I didn't even know what Chrono Trigger was at the point. I saw a lot of these RPGs, and it was like I would play. My cousin and I would go in, and we would pay for time. He would pay for time. Then I would pay to continue the time because we were playing the RPG. Of course, we would never finish it because we would run out of money before we could even get anywhere into the game. But it exposed me to role-playing games.
Right. Oh. Would they let you save games and come back later on the
machine? No, they did not.
They did not.
That's the thing. It's like, we just went and played because my brother and I, when we went with my brother and I, we would play 2-player games like, Ninja Turtles, Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, those kind of things. My cousin and I were really into RPGs or like, so we into stories. So we would do that with each other. We just go and just play, and I would pay for some time. He would pay for some time. It would just like stretch it out to almost, I remember one time we stayed there for like, almost 12 hours. It was not good.
Wow.
Right.
It was not good. But, yeah. And so, like I eventually, when I realized, I searched the internet, got older, and there were ROMs, and they had ROMs and like Super Nintendo ROMs. And I was like, I remember these games, that I used to play back then. And so I would find the ROMs and play on the emulator. And I was hooked. Like that was my entry point into like hardcore RPG, JRPG specifically, fandom, like games like Chrono Trigger, games like Illusion of Gaia, Final Fantasy 2, Final Fantasy 3, 4 and 6 now.
Right, yeah.
Just like even Star Ocean, Star Ocean hadn't been localized. But you found some ROMs with translators in it, and like Tales of Fantasia, like the story, like, and then that kind of led me more into writing stories than actually the anime or the movies or the videos. It was the role playing games. It was more of like this grand adventure, this like the hero's journey, like, and of course we speak about it in stereotypical terms now. It's like, this is stereotypical JRPG. The young boy finds out he's destined for something greater, village gets burned down, or something to that effect, and he's just thrust into the world to fend for himself and to learn his higher destiny. But that's the kind of thing that kind of like drove me, kind of like I wanted to play more and more and more. Like, so I found more RPGs, and I got a Sega Genesis. I got Nintendo GameCube. Those were complete humongous gaps in gaming, by the way, consoles, by the way. Yeah, both my parents were teachers, and so like they were all into studying, studying, etc. That's also why I gained I was huge into reading. And I read a lot of fan fiction and read a lot of fantasy books, etc. All of which fueled my all of it, an amount of, it makes me who I am and what I'm into. But like video games, the one thing I didn't like about, when I say didn't like, if I had to criticize Trinidad about anything, it's like we import these games, we import consoles and stuff. So if we were to buy the systems locally or the games locally, they'd be very expensive, So a lot of the times to get a console like my GameCube, my mother had to, like, when she came to visit a friend in the U.S., gave her some money I had, and she bought it right up here, and brought it back down with her, and it was like saved a lot of money.
Right. Yeah.
And we didn't have chain stores like GameStop or anything. It's like you just went to a electronics store and hope they had a video game. Hope they had a video
right.
game. there. And as I said, the video game stores were there. We had them few and far between. The same places that allow you to play usually also sold games as well, but they were very expensive and cost prohibitive. And so like now it's a lot different. You can find video games. There are specific places like that sell video games and stuff, but again, their prices are a lot higher since they have to pay import taxes on them.
Right.
So a lot of people just either buy digitally, or when have people who are visiting overseas buy the game for them and bring it down.
Cool.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that happens in a lot of places.
That sounds really, really familiar, because I remember that era. The only advantage that we had here was, for some reason, where I live in Windsor is a small town, but we're incredibly ethnically diverse.
Mm-hmm.
And we had stores that were actually like people who would come here to start a store from, like, say, Hong Kong. And they would just open a store like they'd have back at home. And you'd go into these places and you could get, like, Genesis was the big thing for us. And you could get the games right from Japan, the Mega Drive ones. But you had to cut the sides off of them, or they wouldn't fit into an American machine.
Oh wow!
But yeah, and it was like you finding stuff on the emulator. We would just go to these shops, and none of us could read Japanese at the time. So you're like, I don't know what this is, but there's like a guy with a sword and a monster blown up and a half naked chick, so I have to get this and play it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh man!
And then it made it rough for the role playing games, because then everything would come up in Japanese. We're like, well, I recognize the numbers and they're getting bigger, so that must be good.
Oh wow! That's an experience, man. Like, it's, to me, I guess I can't emphasize enough how important story is for things for me.
Mm-hmm.
It fuels everything I consume media wise: video games, TV shows, books, movies. It's just like having all of these things, like video games, especially RPGs. And now, like, I'm onto Western RPGs, like, especially the games that allow you to create your own character and just like craft your own personality, like Mass Effect, BioWare games, Mass Effect, Dragon Age, some of my favorite games. Skyrim, the Elder Scrolls games. Man, I was level 20 in Skyrim before I even attempted, like, the main quest.
Huh.
It's just so many things to do, and it's just everything in that game is done well in terms of story. And like The Witcher 3, a game I have yet to finish, but I find, like, all these side quests with writing and stories that are on par to something that would be considered a main quest in another game.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
They're just such a delight to play. Like, you go through the land, you're just like trying to find another storyline to finish. Like, even if they're short and they're sweet, they just have this entire arc of a story that is so fulfilling that you just keep wanting to go off the beaten path to see if you can find more.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like video games for me were a big thing. They were definitely what shaped my existence. And growing up as a kid, like I said, my parents were very strict. Very strict with video games. I would have to, like, borrow my friend's Game Boy. I played my first Pokemon game on a borrowed Game Boy Color with a borrowed cartridge. And I would, like, you'd hide the comic book in the books. I would hide the Game Boy in the books. I'd hide it under my mattress, and then at night, like, when parents went to sleep, like, just play for hours. And so, like, yeah, I didn't have a lot of the, like, I played all the systems, but that's because I probably just borrowed them and like, hid them and made sure my parents didn't know I had them. Sorry, parents, if you're listening. But yeah, like, my parents went through all the trouble of, like, we had, those big TVs, fat TVs back in the day where you put your hand behind it and it was hot, someone was playing it, was using it. My parents would just, like, make sure they would always do the check.
Right.
And then I would outsmart them by putting the fan right up against there, and then eventually they would just hide the entire thing. And then I would find their hiding place, put it back before they even came back. And then they realized this is not going to stop him, so they just left it there and dared me to touch it. Which was more effective than you might actually think. Yeah, I mean, Trinidad. It's a beautiful place. It's a beautiful country. It's I think there's benefits to having things a little later than the rest of the world. We've caught up now, but it allowed you to really use what was there and take advantage of what was there and really appreciate what was there.
Okay, well, I have a question. So is there any homegrown Trinidadian geek culture?
As I said, a lot of we didn't have, like, the internet wasn't really big for a while, so you'd have to actually be in a place where, I remember one time, like, I was trying my hand at drawing manga or drawing anime, or just like drawing a character. I can't remember what the character was, and I was at lessons, math lessons, after school. And they had these kids from different schools who would come there just for math lessons as well. And I was sitting there trying, and then this girl would ask, like, "Hey, do you draw that?" And then, we got into this long discussion about anime and stuff. And it's like, that's usually how that happened. Is someone you bump into someone at like a video game, that video game place, and you start talking, or you're reading a comic, or you print out. You have printouts of like video game magazines or something, and they see you and they're like, "Oh my gosh, that's really cool." And then you start talking. That's the way. Or you were just best friend. You were best friends with people who were involved in it anyway, and so you had your ready-made clique. Right. Nowadays we're more, again, it's more streamlined. You have the internet, so you have a lot of places. A lot of people can meet up online with their similar interests. We start having anime conventions too.
Oh wow!
I don't even think that was a thing when I left. They call it Alias. I don't know what it stands for, but it's their annual anime convention where people cosplay. They go see. Yeah, I guess do typical anime convention things. So
that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So that's basically it.
Wow. But I wouldn't. But are there any like local authors or anything like that are just popular, pretty much only in Trinidad, and that most people outside of Trinidad wouldn't know about?
I'll be honest. I do not know. Like, I know
it's okay.
It's been a while. Like, I can tell you at the time before I left, I was very interested in homegrown things. Like, we had I don't even think this became more than just a pilot, I guess. We had, a pilot in terms of comics anyway. We had a guy who was creating this comic book, and I can't even remember what it was about too, but I remember being very, very intrigued about it and like wanting to see more. Like, you have a lot of people who are creatives in Trinidad. I think the overall theme is, how do you stay true to yourself, and in terms of like your influences, because a lot of people are influenced by American culture, American artistry, etc. I'd say I've read a couple of novels. Like, Trinidad has we have a lot of contemporary great like novelists, like contemporary novelists, but I haven't seen anyone written much about just our folklore, our supernatural things. I know they exist because I've seen them on Amazon,
right?
But I like, if the only reason I know they exist is because I was actually searching for folklore nonfiction books to do research from.
Right.
And so it's like, I don't think they're very they have a very huge pop following, rather.
Mm.
So I can't really attest to what's happening now, but back when I left, at least, there wasn't really much of that. Not that there wasn't anyone doing it or trying it or attempting it. You know, it's just that it wasn't something that was like a groundbreaking phenomenon, as it were.
I always like to find out if there's anything when we're talking to people from different countries about what's special about their country's geek culture, because I find every country does have something special. People aren't always aware of it, or again, sometimes it's just small local things and such. Yeah. But the world is a big place. There's all kinds of cool stuff going on all over the place. Just
absolutely,
some stuff just hasn't made it out to common culture yet, even though we have the internet.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, we're right up under America here, man.
Right.
For better or for worse.
Well, we Canadians have the same problem. We're too influenced by the United States culture-wise, so we, even with Canadian content rules, which I mentioned earlier, about 70-80% of what we watch is definitely American.
Mm.
Yeah. And that, remaining 20%, a lot of that's actually British. It's not Canadian either.
Oh, wow.
Sure. Except for music. Oddly enough,
true.
Canadian music does tend to be really popular in Canada.
Well, I would hope it would be.
Canadian content rules help there, too. We do have those. Some people say it's a side effect of the winter, because when you have a winter, you're trapped indoors with nothing else to do. So we have a lot of musicians.
Dude, I visited winter. I visited winter once. No, that's not at all what I meant to say. I visited Canada once, Alberta. It was the summertime, but why is your summer our fall? That's the one bone I have to pick. Like, why is your summer our fall or spring or early spring? Like, it's not meant to be so cold at that time of year anywhere. In my humble opinion, it's a guy from the Caribbean who enjoys warmth.
Yeah, well, that's Alberta. In southern Ontario, where we are right now, we're about to actually have a heat wave in the next couple of days, where it's going to be solidly in the mid-30s for the next week or two.
Yeah.
Are you guys Celsius as well?
Yeah, we use Celsius. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Trinidad also uses Celsius, not unlike my adoptive homeland.
I was going to say every civilized country on the planet uses the metric system. There's only there's only the United States, and I think there's 2 small nations in Africa that use the imperial system, and that's it.
I mean, Americans also call football soccer, so there's that too.
Yeah.
That's another. That's another thing. Like, I mean, and then there's baseball instead of cricket. I mean, they're not the same thing, just named differently. It's just I prefer cricket better. That's what we do. And then cheerio.
Yeah, actually, I just saw people playing cricket yesterday. I was walking through my local park, and there were a couple Indian immigrants playing cricket together.
I mean, that's the kind of thing, me being up here in the United States, is something I want to find for my kids. When I eventually have them, they're not here yet or planned. But, we have up here, I've seen, we go to our local, music festival or something, and there's a steel band playing, a group of kids, a group of people with playing individual steel bands as an orchestra kind of thing, as an orchestra, and then there's, our county where we are has a cricket league for kids. So it's
cool.
That's definitely something that I'm going to have my children who are non-existent partake in the future when they are existing.
Wait a sec. Is cricket big in Trinidad?
Wait, what? Is water wet?
Okay. No, sorry. Again, ignorant foreigner here.
Cricket is our national, how baseball is national pastime. Cricket is our national pastime. We don't have a Trinidadian cricket team. We have the West Indies. All the Caribbean islands have one team for world matches.
Okay.
We have our intra-league. We have our Trinidad team. We have individual Trinidad. Other Caribbean islands have their teams, but they don't play on the world stage. on the world stage, all of the Caribbean islands have one team, so you find players on that team from a bunch of different islands.
Right. But the islands normally have their own teams that play against each other.
Yes.
Okay. Well, it's similar here in Canada. We have Canada's huge, of course. And so each province has their own hockey teams because hockey is our national sport.
Yeah.
And then they play against each other and such. And there's the National Hockey League. And then when the Olympics comes around, they take the best of the players from all the different teams. They combine them into one and they form Voltron. I mean, they form a hockey fighting monster. Which is actually not an exaggeration. Did you know that up until the early early 1990s, somewhere in the 1990s, okay, in the Winter Olympics, okay, when the Winter Olympics came around, now every country sends its hockey team, okay?
Yeah.
Up until the 1990s, when Canada sent its team, Canada didn't have to play until the finals. It was just assumed that they were the final boss. So they didn't make them play for any of the other games. Canada just was the final boss.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, there's no more fitting a final boss than Canada in terms of hockey, I think.
Well, the Russians are pretty good. Yeah. I mean, I hate to admit it. The Russians are pretty good, but yeah, we for a long time. Now we do have to play like everyone else. We usually win, but we're
you have to earn your spot there, I guess.
But we do have to earn our slot, and occasionally there are some nail biters here and there.
Oh wow! So you're saying Russia is like your Shao Kahn to Canada's Shang Tsung?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
There are evil, counterparts on the other side of the Arctic, and we spar with them on a regular basis. It's just no one hears about it because no one cares.
Oh gosh.
So actually, Russians are awesome. I like Russians. We even had one on the show a couple episodes ago, and so. There's another plug, folks. If you get the chance, listen to our episode where we're
please,
talking with
everyone, listen to the Department of Nerdly Affairs. Just do it.
I think
this is my subtle, velvety voiced endorsement.
Okay, we'll use that as part of our advertisement. Before we talk about your podcast, Don, did you have anything else you want to ask Justin?
Well, I found it. I was wondering what you think because you mentioned you're into how stories progress.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk about the video games, because I've noticed in the last 5 years, maybe 10, it seems like the video game plots get more detailed and complex, whereas when you look at, say, movies and television, they seem to be stripping everything down to their more basic elements. I'm wondering, have you noticed something like that lately? Or
I absolutely have. It's the AAA mentality of video games. It's like, the moment that it started, the moment that cutscenes were voiced or voice acting became more prevalent in video games, and then we can have the characters have voices. Oh, we can give those voices personality. Oh, we can actually craft. And I think it's more of the fact that video games are more of an interactive media. That there's so many different endings or different ways or plot lines or things that stories can go to. I'll give you an example. I don't know if you guys know about this video game, Detroit Become Human.
No, probably not.
This game blew me away. So it's mainly like a walk around ish point and click, not really point because you use the controller to control the characters. You go around, interact with things. It's basically about androids. Androids are part of human society. They're used from everything from construct. They take over all the menial labor or physical labor, which puts actual people out of jobs, and they become that integrated into human life. And you play the part of 3 androids. And the plot is them breaking away from their protocol and becoming quote unquote deviant. Mm-hmm. And what that deviancy means for them in particular. And you can play these characters differently. Mm-hmm. These characters can die at any point in the story, and the story moves forward without them.
Huh.
And basically, every time you finish a segment, you have choices in a segment. Every time you finish a segment, you're shown a flowchart, which includes with only the choices you made lit up, and you can see you see the sheer amount of branching things that could have happened in that one scene had you chosen or played differently. It's an amazing game. I suggest I recommend it, highly recommend it. I played it through once, being the good guy, because that's where I tend to lean. I'm lawful good. But I plan on going back and just making every single awful decision I could possibly make, and probably get characters killed. There's a lot of action sequences too with like quick time events, but I digress. Going back to your point, Don. Yeah, I have noticed it. I do think that my personal belief is that it is because of the very nature of video games, the sheer number of people who played and experienced it, especially with the creative people who are out here. Anyone can tell a story now. Not just I guess I hate saying the words Hollywood elites, I guess, but like anyone can tell a compelling story through video games. And you see it in their graphics. Like game studios spend like an inordinate amount on just lighting and new graphics engines and motion capture. Games have become like now almost indistinguishable to movies. So yeah, and movies themselves have tried to become more bare bones and like stick to a more, I guess, formulaic thing. Video games, you can do anything, and that's why there's not much of a risk. Well, there are risks, clearly financial risks if your game bombs. But you still get sales. You still get people will still purchase them. See, people still pick them up. Games have their niche markets here. Movies tend to flop if they're just like really, really bad. I don't know if that answers the question, but that's just my take on it.
That works. Yeah, because I think you might be onto something too. That because a video game you participate in, there's more of it's easier to get into the story because you're making it happen. Whereas movies now, because they want such big audiences, they tend to take everything down to the lowest common denominator.
Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly it.
Yep, that's definitely true. Keep in mind, movies today are designed for international audiences. So the whole point is they're supposed to be enjoyable by audiences that don't speak English. And they should be comprehensible by them too. So they're making movies that should work as well in Russia, in Tanzania, in Chile, in Trinidad and Tobago. I mean, these movies should work everywhere because that's Hollywood's goal, right? It's those global marketing bucks, and of course China as well, which is a big global market. So that's one of the reasons why they're simplifying things down, because also movies are a bigger and bigger financial risk, whereas video games, as you were just talking about, Justin, are actually becoming less of a financial risk in many ways. I mean, yes, there are AAA games that are still a huge financial risk and can cost huge amounts of money, but there are also lots and lots of indie games that you can use very simple indie game engines that are not free, but they're fairly cheap, and then you can produce games with them. I mean, there's even a market for visual novels right now, and you can use software that'll cost you like maybe $20-30 on Steam, like Tyranno Builder or Visual Novel Maker. That's a little more expensive. You can make a game using that software and your own resources, and then release it for money. And you can even have like in-games and things like that. It's amazing what you can do now.
Yeah, like everything's become more accessible. And I don't know, like I'm of two minds about it. It's more accessible, so more people have the opportunity to get their things out there, get their voice out there, get their talents out there and be recognized. And that's something that should be encouraged, But at the same time, it affects quality. Like you have so many things out there, but not all of it is, what TV execs would consider, or video game execs would consider, the cream of the crop, as it were.
Mm-hmm. Definitely true. And the amount of crap that's out there, which is a lot, makes it difficult sometimes for people to find the quality stuff as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Or even turns people off. Indie video games, for example, if they play a few crappy ones to begin with, they decide, well, these are all crappy, and they walk away from them, not realizing there's some real gems out there too.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, someone once said the greatest thing about the internet is anyone can participate. The worst thing about the internet is anyone can participate.
I'm gonna use that somewhere. That is a gem. That is gold.
And it's unfortunate. I don't call it gold. I call it a truism, unfortunately, because that's just kind of the way it is. And
yeah,
I did definitely not come up with that. I've stolen it from somewhere. I've just forgotten who.
Oh well, I'll attribute it to that unknown person,
yeah,
like I always do, apparently.
Yeah, well, there we go. Yeah, there are, and who knows? Maybe that unknown person will befriend you on Facebook 6 years from now and say, "Hey, that was me."
Hopefully. I mean, hey, I like to give credit where credit is due, man.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so why don't you tell us a little bit about a dude, a chick walk into a studio? What's up with that?
Well,
podcast.
Yes, we have a brand. Let me start off by saying, you may know all this stuff happening in America right now, and no matter what side of the aisle you're on, it's overwhelming. It's every day there's something going on. Every day there's like something bad, something that's just completely upending your day. And my friend Katie and I we were actually searching for a podcast that would, just get us away from that and just like basically just lose ourselves, essentially. And so we figured, why not do our thing? Like, why not? We have good banter, I hope. No, we have good banter. And so we just decided to just try it. A dude and a chick walk into the studio. We made it our duty to our potential listeners to provide a fun, relaxing, educational, and chill entertainment experience. Just talking about life topics through the lens of just two geeky individuals. Our first episode is coming out in the first week of July, and that episode, you get the sneak peek. It's about marriage. Basically telling our stories, how we met our partners, and the things we learned about marriage, the things we wish we knew, through our lens. We just want to make, like, we were not tackling politics. We're leaving that to the people who are paid to deal with that. But we just figured that we would try to talk about things that interested us, and that would we would always want to find out about from each other, our perspectives on things. And maybe even just talk about several topics that interest us. Like, I'm hoping to do one on audio dramas. I'm hoping to do one on like video games and just video games in general. I'm hoping to do one on, Doctor Who, because hey, we're both Doctor Who fanatics. She more so than I am. Yes, but yeah, like we have a lot of great conversations in passing, and we think people would be interested in hearing what we have to say. And that's not to toot my own horn or to toot our horns. It's just we want to leave some good in the world. We want to just if for a moment take you away from the stuff that's happening in the world right now. And if we can do that, and we can help you with that, and you're entertained by our shenanigans, we call that a success,
Okay. So where can our audience listen to this show? Where can they find it?
Right now, it is available on iTunes and Google Play Music. Just search a dude and a chick walk into a studio, and we're searchable. So we are on iTunes and Google Play Music. Just search a dude and a chick walk into a studio. We're up on both of those platforms. You can find us on Facebook at Dude and Chick Podcast. Just feel free to like our page. We'll be sharing things that we talk about on the podcast. We'll be doing video extras. Basically, get a glimpse into our little noggins here. Well, I have a big noggin. She has a small one. And yeah, on Twitter at Dude Chick Show. Dude Chick Show. Pretty simple.
Excellent. Now, if someone wanted to find some of your audio drama that you did, are they still available? Are they still anywhere on the internet that people can find them?
I have a website that I just have lingering around here. There's nothing really on there. It's just there for my own purposes. But it is on sandosavant.com.
Sando, okay.
Yeah. SANDOSAVANT. Sandosavant.com. When you go there, there's a tab called Creations. Just click on that and you'll see audio dramas. Click on that and you'll be directed to the audio dramas I have up there. And you can, feel free to listen. Feel free to share. They're just there. They're there to be entertaining. They're there to just bring light. Like if you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed making it, just shoot me a line and say, hey, I listened to it or not. But it's something I did for myself, and I'm glad. I'm just so blessed that people actually liked it.
Right.
So yeah, that's it. Sandosavant.com. Hit the Creations tab and click Audio Dramas.
Now, are both episodes of Project Arclight up there?
Yes, actually, I just had to check that. Yes, both episodes of Project Arclight are on there. I will.
Very cool, because I never heard the second one. I remember hearing the first one, but not the second. So I'd like to hear that.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So it's. I would love to hear your opinion of it because I value your opinion, as it were.
Okay, thank you.
And Dom, you too. Please listen.
That one I want to hear because I'm curious to see how you translate something that's essentially visual into something strictly audio.
Well, I wish we had more time. That is an art form. That is is a passion of mine too. It's all through script writing and the use of sound effects and music, because you can portray things like sometimes when you watch anime and you have the explainer character, the character's like, oh, he just used that sword technique. That sword technique does such and such and such, and it's like it just seems completely out of place with okay, we see what it does, but in audio drama you don't have anything else, so that explainer character is almost like welcome. And
it's pretty much required.
Yeah, and if you do it in such a way where it's not like I'm just saying what it does, I'm explaining its intricacies to somebody. Like you always have a foil character who does not know or who is a beginner or a novice. So there's always a reason to, and there's even just saying oh, I was on the phone. If it's not clear, if you're not clear on how to make that happen via audio drama, or make that clear via audio drama, a well-timed or well-positioned comment from one character, he's on the phone, just something simple, would get that point across without intruding too much into the believability and the immersion,
Yep, that was something that both Justin and I had a bit of a passion about, is because even when I did my own stuff, I was always looking for how do I find something that you shouldn't be able to do in audio drama and do it anyway. Because that's the fun part, right? That's the challenge of being an audio engineer and coming up with ways and a writer, and to find ways to combine that and produce an audio drama experience that they're not going to find anywhere else.
I definitely suggest Project Arclight. If you want a more complete story, go to Boots Edging. Like that's all of the episodes are up on santasavant.com as well. They were. I'm not sure if the Legend of Zelda is up on there, but I'll make sure and put that one up there if it's not. But it's a passion of mine, and if it makes your day any brighter, if it makes your guests, your listeners' day any brighter, just to hear, just a story and my take on it, and you get to see how these things work,
Huh. And on that note, thank you very much for coming on, Justin. We really appreciate you taking the time and telling us about your experiences and your life and about Trinidad as well.
I really appreciate that, you guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, good night, folks. Tune in next time when we'll be talking about something almost as awesome as this. Good night.
Good luck.
Thanks for listening to the show. If you'd like to hear more or join the conversation, come visit us at obeythedna.com. You can also find us on iTunes or whatever fine podcast site forgot to lock their back door. So until next time, remember that to master the nerdly arts takes time, practice, and enough Coca-Cola to drop a rhino. See ya!